So we're back to discussing painting again. Isn't that nice? And not politics, and not the occult. Isn't that a good thing? Anyway, here's one from John P. You and others talk about ways of looking at nature when painting. Things like looking away, looking hard at the thing you aren't painting, defocusing and disfocusing, not looking past the picture plane, blurring down, focused looking. Nature looks different with each way of looking, so how do I know which look I want? He asks. So that's actually a huge thing. I've noticed that when you're teaching students, you give them some information like, if they're not seeing color, for example, it's usually because they're looking right at something. And the color portion of your eyes is at the outer side, according to my scientist zoology student, doctor of zoology. And by the way, her thing online, I wonder what that's called. It's on Seeing. Lindsay Harkness, Harkness. Do look that up. I believe it's online somewhere, but her website is, and I think it's going to be associated with her website. But she talks about this specifically, the science. But anyway, so what we know, though, is that the cones, the color portion of your seeing, is toward the periphery of your eyes. There's a story that goes with that. When I was a student with Gamble, I remember Gamble came in there to my studio and corrected a note. And I proceeded, of course, I was trying to make a likeness, and so I wound up painting through that area again, and he came back in the next time he was in there, and he corrected the note again. And it happened 3 times. And the third time he came in, he corrected the note back to exactly what he had said earlier, to what he had found it to be. And I said to myself after he left, I said, this isn't going to keep going on. He's changing the note back to something he sees every time. Every time I look at the note, I see something different. I can look at any color and I can see orange, or I can see purple, or I can see green, and have no idea. I mean, I just change the color and to have that one day and have something else the next. And so I took it upon myself to say, I'm not leaving the room until he must be using his eyes differently. He must be having a more consistent way of thinking about the color or something. But I assumed it must be in the eyes. So I looked this way and I looked that way and tried all these various ways of looking the ones I had heard of or knew of at that point. Might have even included like the popped eye or something like that, the impressionist mindset thing, way of thinking, way of acting. But I couldn't, and I was getting really frustrated. I couldn't see it. So I decided to go out and get lunch or something or other. And I turned my head, I was walking by, and there was his note. There it was, out of the corner of my eye. I actually saw the note he had been hitting. I saw it in nature and I saw it in the painting. I saw it, they were the same. And I could, and with that way of working with my eyes, I found that I could consistently see the same note. But there's something about that. Is that significant, actually, how you use your eyes? So one of the ones that becomes a major distraction, we paint, the expression is as if we were coming out of a fog. And so what that actually means in Boston School is slightly different from what you see with individuals like Richard Smith. They talk about squinting your eyes. A lot of people talk about that, and squinting your eyes is great value. But what we're talking about with the Boston School is literally a timing of things. So you paint as if you're coming out of a fog, and all it means is you blur your eyes and you see what's strong, what stays strong, and how other things all hang together and form the great sweeping unities. But you have these major effects, and that's in that category of drawing from effects or organizing effects, these things you hear in Boston School conversation. But if you're painting as if you're coming out of a fog, all you're doing you have to blur your eyes to do that, right? So what you're doing is blurring to see which of these effects is strong and which is weak and which disappear into great unities of massed together with other things into big unities. So I've had students who will start painting fuzzy pictures, and I'll ask them what they're doing, why they're painting fuzzy pictures. And they said, you said paint as if you were coming out of a fog. And so I blurred my eyes a ton, and I said, it's all foggy, and I painted that. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I understand the confusion. So what is it that we are doing? What's the point of this blurring again? Well, it's actually to tell you what the players are that we're going to work with. What effects, what points on the painting dominate, right? And we're going to work, if you're a Boston School person, you're going to work from the strong ones to the weak ones. You're going to set up your entire painting on the basis of these strong players. And that figure created by these strong players is called the arabesque. That's the Boston School term. It doesn't apply to anything else. I mean, people use it as a coincident word with silhouette. It's not. The definition the Boston School used was the figure created by these effects. So we have a handful, maybe 10, maybe 5, even fewer major strong effects, and they create a figure. And your basic problem is to set that figure up well in the right place and articulate the heck out of the points that make up that figure. So that figure, though, you see it because you blur down your eyes, and you see that you're not going to paint 30 million things, which you'd get totally lost trying to do. You're simply going to paint those top players and set them up beautifully in a relation to each other in every way that they relate to each other. Color, effect, location, edge, all those things. And but you will always be drawing what you see with your eyes looking like you always look. You just look, there it is. That's the world we're painting. We're painting it. The history of painting, Western art, or any representational painting, people paint what they see. Nobody does fuzzy things. I mean, some people do try some stunts with focus. Paxton himself tried some stunts with focus. But let me cover a couple of other points. And so one of the others he's asking about is this idea of defocusing or disfocusing. And that really is similar to the idea of popping your eye for an impressionist. There are ways to look toward things and take in the whole. But to really take in the whole, you can actually cross your eyes and get a better sense of the whole without losing the cleanness of the impression. But that's all defocusing is. It means you just stop using your foveals and just take in the whole panoply of things simultaneously. I call it simultaneity of vision. You just see everything rather equally. You don't look here and then look there. You see everything at once. And that's another expression. Another expression for that is the big look, and you're looking at the thing as a whole. So I did have a student, in fact, it was actually John. He was painting something, and he said, when I look at the thing as a whole, I couldn't see that hard edge on the front edge of that, on the shadow line of that bud of flower. And so I just got rid of it. And again, that was where this discussion actually originated. I said, well, but the fact is, it's a major player. It's got a strong impression. Well, not when I'm seeing big. Well, so that was where the question came from. So do you, when you're seeing big, if you're seeing really big, do you actually look at nothing? So that's a real good, important question, though. What is seeing big? Well, it's the general impression. What you're looking for is the general impression. You're actually pursuing, for example, the thing that's least like in your lay-in. You're pursuing it on the basis of what the general impression is telling you. But you're not painting the look of the general impression with an eye fuzziness that causes you to not see anything in particular. You wouldn't paint that. You're just allowing yourself to enjoy the general impression and then looking at your painting, see if it actually conveys, when you look at it the same way, if it conveys the same data, which it will do if you're actually painting things as you see them. So, was there another one? I think there's another one. Not looking past the picture plane. Now that's attributed by Gamble to Joseph de Camp. He talks about the picture plane. Don't look past the picture plane. And some of this, the modern world talks about, fuliginous flatness and stuff, some of these funny things. But the idea of the flat, that is to say, the idea of not going in, it's rather in the same category as not focusing. You're not looking at the picture plane per se, you're just not looking past it. So you're allowing yourself to see, you look toward this and you see this whole world as if it were on that plane, like it were on a piece of glass, which is where that word plane even comes from. And again, those things just simply have common benefits. It's easier if you see the thing as a plane, it's easier to see shape per se. To treat shapes as if they were flat and not have to think them out, try to figure the shapes out by knowing if this is going back and that's going this way, it must be that angle, that sort of thing. You're not doing that. You're actually able to really, truly grasp the pattern of an arm, for example, the pattern of the entire thing. You see it as a two-dimensional phenomenon, no matter even if it's reaching out toward you. So, so nature, but I think I'm beginning to get to that point. Nature looks different with each way of looking, so how do I know which look I want? So looking hard at the thing you're not painting, what you're doing when you do that, we talk about seeing relationally, and everything we do, seeing is seeing relationally, right? If you're not doing that, you're not seeing. So this to this and that to that, as Brackman would say, as any impressionist would tell you, it's this to this and that to that. He said that's all it is. It's just this to this and that to that. Well, that's all what is. Well, that's what seeing is. And Gamble said the same thing in the Twilight Painting. That's seeing is seeing relationships. And so when you're looking hard at the thing you're not painting, what are you doing? You're actually getting yourself to actually see something clearly while you're aware of the thing you're actually working on. And when you get that, there's a context now. You've actually established a context. And you can begin to actually see what this means to that. You'll begin to see more clearly what the edges are in relation, what the chromatic categorization is like, which one is stronger. You can make lots of comparisons, and there's just one way to do it. The guy, there's a very interesting thing that comes up in my world. I try to share this with people. There's a book written on on knowledge, gnosis, whatever. It's how can you affirm? How can you get to certainty about truth, right? How can you be sure about things, right? And basically, what the summary of the thing is, well, you have to do three things. You have to look at things directly, and this is going to come up in my next video because somebody else, Josh, asked about this. But you're going to look at things directly, and some people, especially if you're a beginner, you think that you're going to do this thing over here, and you're going to put it over here, and you're going to take this over here and put it over here. And if you get all these things to look individually right, that somehow they will add up to the unity of the whole. And of course they won't. That'll just be the beginning. But the first thing you do is you look at a thing for what it is. The next thing you do is you look at it in relation to something else, right? And preferably bring in 2 or 3 witnesses, the classic way of establishing truth in a courtroom. So you bring in 2 or 3 witnesses. So if you're looking at a color note X, you look at various other notes. For example, if this color note is really dark, you look at other darks and you'll actually see that this is the reddest of those darks, and it'll help you to actually nail it. And it's similar, for example, if it's highly chromatic, just look at all the other chromas, and you'll be able to say, this is actually more chromatic than any of the others or not. And those kinds of things will happen, right? And so there's various categories, even the size. You look at other things by size. You look at the big bowl when you're painting the piece of fruit, and you see how the size feels in relation to the great thing, right? The size thing. So you get data like that, and you go and you collect, if you're talking about size, you collect it from the bowl, you collect it from looking at the whole, you collect it from the little guys around it or the other apples or any other shapes you want. And you begin to see that you have a group of witnesses that begin to attest or correct what you thought was X, which is, that's what any person, even a person who works in sight science, is going to have to do. You can put something down like you think you believe that, but unless the relationships are right, nothing matters in your picture. And so then the last thing is looking at the thing as a whole, and that's the cosmic view. Try to take in the thing as a whole. And that's scientific discussion about getting to knowledge, getting to certainty about what you know. And of course, that's the primary dilemma of a student. You need to get mastery of the world you see in front of you. You have to be able to put down, and you have to be able to manipulate that world and adjust that world and deal with the correspondences, and the categorizations of things within that world. I'm talking about things meaning sizes and intensities of color and the hues and relative lightness and darkness, locations on the page. These are all the things you're trying to ascertain by bringing in multiple witnesses and looking at it. Gamble once said to me, by the way, in a kind of maybe the summary kind of this thing, he said, I asked him one point, we're doing sight size without any question, and I said, when do you stop all this measuring? I considered it, even when this is, I consider it a complete nuisance. And Gamble said to me, the cure for measuring is more measuring. And he said it with a little bit more of a tone, like he was getting in my ear. And I said, as he was leaving, I said to myself, well, then I'll measure the hell out of it. But this sight size thing, it's got more problems than good things happening for it. And so from that point forward, though, I knew that I had to adjust every note with more relationships than anybody else I knew. And I found that very quickly you'd be able to snap through 3 and 4 and 5 relationships really fast, make quick adjustments. And you'd be right where you wanted to be in just no time at all, way more efficiently, with way more confidence. Now, the real beauty of seeing relationally, of course, and actually I think I'll save this for the next one. What was there? Was there another point? Looking past, looking big, looking away, looking hard at the thing you're not painting. Yeah, looking away is all just about the color. Like you see color better. When you look to the side a little bit, you'll see the colors better. And but focusing is where the color ain't, right? We call that looking in, but it just lies to you. And it's actually, as I said before, it's like just one piece of information but there are many other pieces that you have to work to find. Yeah. And in the end, the question for you is, so what are you actually trying to deliver in your painting about the truth? What is the look of nature? So are you trying to deliver a painting where people could look over, and this is the history of painting is all like this, where they can look over and notice the couch and notice you made the shapes right, or they can look over and just see some fuzzy blur, so it looks like a camera shot. You could say that's your choice. The problem with doing funny things that are camera-like is that becomes the subject. It actually dominates the subject, like perspective distortion does. It just dominates your subject. So my sense of it is that what most painters have done, and what all of them are saying, is paint the world as you see it. Paint it the way it presents without looking hard at it. It's just the way you would see it. So you can analyze this and that and notice this and that. And, it's always in a relative focus. And this part is relatively the same focus as that part. And there's no funny edges of blur and all that sort of odd stuff. So if you know that that's what you're trying to paint, that'll help you a lot. And you'll be able to use all these other ways of looking. And all they're for is for use. Like I said, and blurring is just to categorize the effects. And other people may use them in other ways, but I found one dominant use, one critical use in the Boston School way of working in that blurred eye thing. Paint as if you were coming out of a fog, Boston School. Anyway, so thank you very much for that question, John. And I think you had another one, but I'm going to use that some other day, if you don't mind. And so don't forget to subscribe, comment, share, like, all those things. And thank you very much again for visiting with us.